Hello, friends. In today's lecture, we are going to understand nuisance. Nuisance as a tort. What is nuisance? Nuisance basically means an unlawful interference with a person's use or enjoyment of land or some other right over or in connection with it. So, it is basically the disturbance in the use of somebody's land or the enjoyment of land or some right which is over it. So, the right of air, sunlight, or any right connected to the land. Acts interfering with comfort, health, or safety are examples of it. So, any act which interferes with the safety, comfort, or health of the person's use or enjoyment of land are examples of nuisance. Or not even enjoyment of land. Otherwise, also any act which affects the health, comfort, or safety of somebody are nuisances. The interference may be by any way, which may include noise which is coming from somebody's house, vibrations which are there, heat, smoke, smell, fumes, water, gas, electricity, excavation, or diseases producing germs. Anything which affects somebody else in these forms also can be nuisance. Now, nuisance and trespass are different. We will understand how. Trespass is a direct interference with the possession of the plaintiff's land through some material or intangible object. There is a direct interference. I step into somebody's property, I go inside and hurt, uh, open something, break something. Okay, that is a trespass. Both nuisance and trespass are similar insofar, in either case, the plaintiff has to show possession of land. So you will have to show that this is my land and you're causing me trouble on the land. However, so they may also coincide that some nuisance are also continuing trespass, but there is a very important difference between the two. What is that difference? That interference is direct, then it is a wrong of trespass. When you directly enter somebody's land, you trespass that person's land. But if it is consequential, it amounts to nuisance. So, if I plant a tree on somebody else's land, it is a trespass. Why? Because I have directly interfered with the enjoyment of the right of that person over that land. Okay. But if I plant a tree on my own land and the branches, I plant it in such a way that the branches go onto the land of other and hamper the enjoyment of the right of that land. Okay. Or the roots go so deep that they damage the property of the other person. Then it is nuisance. Okay. Not every branch that goes to the other person's land become nuisance. But if that branch results in a disturbance in the enjoyment of land, then it becomes nuisance. To throw a stone at the neighbor's premises is trespass. Okay. Now, if I directly throw and hurt, damage something, it's trespass. However, if I allow stones from a ruinous chimney to fall on the premises of other, it is nuisance. Something is dilapidated, is breaking, and if I allow that to fall, it is nuisance. Okay. Trespass is the interference with the person's possession of land. Possession is important when it comes to interference with possession is trespass. And if we go back and see, it is interference with the person's use or enjoyment of land, which is nuisance. So possessions are wrong against possession is trespass, a wrong against use or enjoyment is nuisance. Okay. Then in nuisance, there is interference with a person's use or enjoyment of land. We've just understood that. Such an interference with the use or enjoyment could be there without any interference with the possession. You might not even step on somebody's land, but you might create any offensive smell or any noise which could interfere with the other person's use of land. Okay. Moreover, in trespass, interference is always through some material or tangible object. There is some object which is associated, throwing of a stone, going onto the land, using some force on the land. Nuisance is can be committed through medium of intangible objects such as vibration, gas, noise, smell, electricity, or smoke. So, intangibly, if something is done, it is nuisance. Apart from these, a trespass is actionable per se, but in an action for nuisance, special damage has to be proved. If you show trespass, per se actionable. Okay. And nuisance intangible. If smoke is emitted, if I use a sawmill in my establish a sawmill in my house, which is a residential complex, and the other person gets disturbed, it is nuisance. Okay. There are two kinds of nuisance. It may be public or common nuisance, or private nuisance, or the tort of nuisance. Okay. Public nuisance is a crime. Private nuisance comes under civil category. Public nuisance is a crime, whereas private nuisance is a civil wrong. So in public nuisance, you have a wrong which happens here. Public nuisance is interference with the right of public in general. Okay, in general. So when you understand public nuisance and right of public in general, there has to be a public wrong which is done. Okay, and is actionable as an offense. So when it is actionable as an offense, the state takes action against it. Obstructing a public way by digging a trench or constructing structures on it are examples of public nuisance. Public area, public interest of a large number of people has to be affected for it to be a public nuisance. Although such obstruction may cause inconvenience to many persons, but none can be allowed to bring an civil action for that. Otherwise, there may be hundreds of civil actions for a single public nuisance. So, if there is a highway, everybody who crosses it can bring a public action for the digging of a hole on that. Okay, so that is why every action of public nuisance is not actionable by the public in general. To avoid multiplicity of suits, the law makes public nuisance only an offense punishable under criminal law. So it is only under criminal law that you are liable. Okay. In certain cases, when a person suffers special or particular damage different from what is inflicted on the public as a whole, a civil right of action is available to the person injured. So, what do you have to prove? You have to prove a particular or a special damage for a public nuisance to be actionable by you privately. What is otherwise a public nuisance also becomes private nuisance so far as the person suffering special damage is concerned. So, when you show some special injury, that public nuisance becomes private nuisance. The expression special damage in this context means damage caused to a party in contradiction to the public at large. Everybody is caused inconvenience because of the digging of the road, because you have to cross, but somebody falls into it. That one person has suffered more damage. Okay. For example, digging trench on a public highway may cause inconvenience to the public at large. But so here, no member of the public who is thus obstructed or has to take a diversion along with others can sue under civil law. But if any one of them suffers more damage than suffered by others, that is severely injured by falling into it, he can sue in tort. In order to sustain a civil action in respect of public nuisance, proof of special or particular damage is essential. So you have to prove that you have suffered a particular damage. The proof of special damage entitles the plaintiff to bring a civil action for what may otherwise be a public nuisance. Public nuisance is a crime, so you are not allowed to bring a wrong against. But if you prove that you have some special or particular injury, you can bring an action for it under civil law. Thus, if the standing horse and wagons for an unreasonably long time outside a man's house creates darkness and bad smell for the occupant of the house, and also obstructs the access of customers into it, the damage is particular, direct, and substantial, and thus the occupier is entitled to maintain an action. If the plaintiff cannot prove that he has suffered any special damage that is more than what is suffered by others, he cannot claim any compensation for the same. Now, private nuisance. So, public nuisance is a crime, can be actionable when you have a remedy. You have done what? You have shown that you have a special damage associated with it. However, in private nuisance or the tort of nuisance, To constitute the tort of nuisance, the following essentials are required to be: unreasonable interference, interference with the use of enjoyment of land, and damage. So it is unreasonable interference with the use of land and there is damage. Now let's understand what is unreasonable interference. The interference may cause damage to the plaintiff's property or may cause personal discomfort to the plaintiffs in the enjoyment of property. So there has to be interference in your enjoyment of property. However, not every interference is nuisance. That interference has to be unreasonable. Every person must put up with some noise, some vibration, some smell so that the members of the society can enjoy their own rights also. If I play music in my house, if it is at a reasonable volume, you cannot question. If it is unreasonably loud, you have the right to question me under nuisance. If I have a house by the side of the road, I cannot bring an action for the inconvenience which is necessarily incidental to the traffic on the road. Obviously, if I have a house on the roadside, then I cannot question when there is noise because of the traffic. Nor can I sue my neighbor if he's listening to his radio interferes with my study because it is reasonable. If it is unreasonably loud, you can obviously question. So long as the interference is not unreasonable, no action can be brought. So long as you do not seem it to be unreasonable. Here also the test is that's a reasonable man of the society. Not anybody who is sensitive also can bring an action. We'll look at it. A balance has to be maintained between the rights of the occupier to do what he likes with his own and the rights of the neighbor not to be interfered with. So there has to be a balance here. If the interference is unreasonable, it is no defense to say that it was for the public good. Okay, if it is unreasonable, it is unreasonable. What interference is unreasonable varies according to different localities. You will have to see something that is reasonable in a commercial setup or a manufacturing industrial setup cannot be reasonable in a residential setup. Now, Radhe Shyam versus Gurprasad. Gurprasad and others filed a suit against Radhe Shyam and others for permanent injunction. Okay, this is a remedy in nuisance to restrain them from installing and running a flour mill in their premises. It was alleged that the said mill would cause nuisance to the plaintiffs who were occupying first floor portion of the same premises, as in much as the plaintiff would lose their peace on account of rattling noise of the flour mill and thereby their health would be adversely affected. Okay. Now, obviously, if you run a flour mill in your house, there'll be constant noise of the flour mill working. It was held that substantial addition to the noise in a noisy locality by running of the impugned machine seriously interfered with the physical comfort of the plaintiff, and as much it amounted to nuisance, and the plaintiff were entitled to injunction against the defendant. Now, let's understand what's a sensitive plaintiff. If in case you bring an action again for nuisance, you have to show that you are a man of reasonable thought. Somebody who's very sensitive to noise, sound, or any such thing cannot claim to be a victim. He cannot claim to have damages because he has extra sensitivity. And the law takes into account a man of reasonable thought. So, reasonable is the benchmark here, reasonable man. Okay? Now, an act which is otherwise reasonable does not become unreasonable and actionable when the damage, even though substantial, is solely caused due to the sensitiveness of the plaintiff or the use to which he puts the property. So, if you are overly sensitive or you wrongly used your property, then you cannot bring an action if the act was reasonable. So, if certain kind of traffic is no nuisance for a healthy man, it will not entitle a sick man to bring an action if he suffers thereby, even though the damage be substantial. So, if a healthy man is okay with the noise, a sick man cannot bring an action. If some noise which do not disturb or annoy an ordinary person but disturbs only the plaintiff in his work or sleep due to his oversensitiveness, it is no nuisance against the plaintiff. A person cannot increase his liabilities of his neighbors by carrying on an exceptionally delicate trade. Okay, so you are bringing on an exceptionally delicate trade. This is what it is said here, that because of what you put your property to use, that is all that can also make you sensitive. We will see it through a case. Robinson versus Kilworth. The plaintiffs warehoused brown paper in a building, and the heat caused by the defendant in the lower portion of the building for his own business dried and diminished the value of the plaintiff's brown paper. Okay. Now, this is a sensitive use of the land. Okay. The loss was due to exceptionally delicate trade of the plaintiff, and the paper generally would not have been damaged by the defendant's operations. Okay. It was held that the defendant was not liable for nuisance. And what was held here? A man who carries on exceptionally delicate trade cannot complain because it is injured by his neighbor doing something lawful on his own property. If it is something which would not injure anything but an exceptionally delicate trade. So here the heat was otherwise reasonable, but because you carried on a very sensitive work, that's why your paper got burnt, got damaged, and it was held that you are not liable for nuisance. Now, is it a state of affairs? Is nuisance a state of affairs? We'll see this now. Nuisance is generally a continuing wrong. So by this we mean, can an isolated act also be nuisance? A constant noise, smell, or vibration is nuisance. Ordinarily, a single act of escape of that noise cannot be, or smell or vibration or anything dangerous cannot be considered to be nuisance. Now, in the case of Stone versus Bolton, the plaintiff, while standing on the highway, was injured by a cricket ball hit from the defendant's ground, but she could not succeed for nuisance. Why? At the first instance, Justice Oliver said, an isolated act of hitting a cricket ball onto a road cannot, of course, amount to nuisance. Okay? So, an isolated act cannot. The very word connotes some continuity. A nuisance must be a state of affairs, however temporary, and not merely an isolated happening. The approach of the Court of Appeal, as stated by Somerville Lord Justice, was that the gist of the alleged action is not the isolated act of hitting a hole into the highway, a ball into the highway, but rendering of public right of passage dangerous by carrying on the game on the adjacent property. Now, this was the action which was alleged. The fact that the ball reaches the highway only very occasionally is an evidence to show that no dangerous state of affairs exists in the adjoining field. It happens only occasionally. In a number of cases, isolated acts are escape of dangerous things could entitle the plaintiff to recover damages. So in number of cases, those isolated acts can also be allowed. Thus, the wrongful escape is continuous isolate. Whether the wrongful escape is continuous, intermittent, or isolated, it is actionable. And intermittent interference may be more probably annoying than a constant one. Okay. And if it is something that is constant, people might agree to it, but randomly, if it happens, it might be actionable. Let's understand the role of malice in case of any nuisance. So, does an act which is otherwise lawful become a nuisance if the defendant has been actuated by evil motive to annoy the plaintiff? So, otherwise, it is lawful to probably throw garbage outside your own house. But now you throw it outside your own house so that the smell causes annoyance to your neighbor. So, throwing it outside your house so that somebody picks it up is lawful. But so I'm throwing it outside the house of your neighbor is unlawful because you're causing nuisance. But throwing outside your house in such a way that it causes trouble to the other person, is it nuisance or not? So let's understand that. Mayor of Bradford Corporation versus Pickles. In this case, what had happened was the House of Lords held that if an act is otherwise lawful, it does not become unlawful merely because the same has been done with an evil motive. So, merely because of the fact that you do something with an evil motive, an act otherwise lawful does not become unlawful. Lord Macnaghten said, "It is the act and not the motive for the act that must be regarded. If the act, apart from the motive, gives rise merely to damage without any legal injury, the motive, however reprehensible it may be, will not supply that element." So the motive is not relevant, the act is relevant. An unlawful act has to be there. There has to be, always understand, there has to be a legal injury. Injuria sine damnum, damnum sine injuria. Always remember that difference. Okay? Now, however, if an act of the defendant which is done with an ill motive or evil motive becomes an unreasonable interference, it is actionable. So, if it is an unreasonable interference, because the essence of nuisance is unreasonable interference, if that is the case, it becomes actionable. A person has a right to make a reasonable use of his property. But if the use of his property causes substantial discomfort to others, it ceases to be a reasonable act. For example, if I start a hip hop dance class in my house and I live in a flat, the noise of the class and the dance, both the volume of the dancing because of the thumping of the feet to the flats downstairs, and because of the noise of the song, those hip hop beat songs, if that causes an unreasonable interference or discomfort to others, it becomes a nuisance. If a man creates a nuisance, he cannot say that he is acting reasonably. The two things are self contradictory. Obviously, if something is nuisance, it cannot be reasonable. But you always have to judge it from the standard of a right minded man. Now, interference with the use or enjoyment of land. The next essential is that there has to be interference. Now, this interference can be injury to the property, that the property is injured, or you can cause injury to the comfort or health of the occupants of certain property. So, either the property gets damaged or the occupants of the property are caused discomfort. Okay. Now, what happens in case of injury to the property? An unauthorized interference with the use of property of another person through some object, tangible or intangible, which causes damage to the property is actionable as nuisance. Obviously, unauthorized interference to the property through either tangible or intangible. Now, it may be by allowing branches of a tree to hang over the land of another person, or the escape of roots of a tree, water, gas, smoke onto the neighbor's land, or even by vibration. Now, not every hanging of a tree can be a problem, but if that tree is something which gives a poisonous fruit and it falls on the land, then it causes a nuisance. Or the tree sheds so much leaves that the property of the other person gets damaged, or the roots are so deep that it is damaging the other person's property, or your water escapes, or you do some activity, or some steam or gas or poisonous or foul smell escapes. All that is nuisance. Basically, you understand, if you cannot comfortably live on your property or you are caused any health issues because of that, it is nuisance. Nuisance to incorporeal property. Now, nuisance to incorporeal, we understand by interference with the right of support of land and buildings. For example, if I have a building, I have a house, and the boundary of the other person's house is attached to my house. Okay. Now that person starts breaking that boundary. That support to the house is disturbed. I will have a damage in my house. What happens in those ways? A person has a natural right to have a land supported by his neighbors, and therefore the removal of support, lateral or from beneath, is nuisance. For example, if I start scrapping my land so that the land below the boundary wall also I start digging, there has to be support, right? Land support has to be there. That can also be a nuisance. The natural right of support from neighbor's land is available only respect of land without buildings. Therefore, such a right is not available in respect of buildings or other structures on the land. So you have a right with respect to the land and not respect to building or structures. However, not completely possible. True, in some cases, the land and structure also need support. Like I said, if the house is built on the wall and if you start breaking that wall, you are doing a nuisance. If you speak to that person or tell them that I have to do a repair and you reasonably find alternatives, then it's okay. Although law does not recognize the support of a building, yet if the damage to the building is consequential to the damage to the natural right of support, an action for withdrawal of support can lie. Okay, this is what it is saying. It is natural to the right of support. It may be noted that the mere removal of support or excavation is not actionable. Substantial damage has to be proved. Obviously, merely removing something is not actionable. You have to prove that the support, there's some damage because of the removal of support. Section 34 of the Indian Easement Act states the removal of means of support to which a dominant owner is entitled does not give rise to a right to recover compensation until and unless substantial damage is sustained. So basically, if you sustain damage, merely removal of a boundary wall with no effect on you will not have any damage, or merely removal of excavation of ground land without any damage to you will not have any, this will not cause any problem. Now, right to support by grant or prescription. What do you understand by grant or prescription? Sometimes this right to support happens because of passage of time, or you grant some natural right to somebody, and by prescription is by passing of a long period of time. For a long period of time something has happened, so it becomes a right to you. Okay, in respect of buildings, the right of support may be acquired by grant or by prescription. Regarding the right of support for buildings, it was observed in Patridge versus Scott. The right of this sort, it can be easily established. It, if they can be established at all, we think have their origin in grant. So basically, if you are granted a right or by prescription, then you have that right. If the man builds a house at the extremity of land, he does not thereby acquire any easement of support or otherwise over the land of his neighbor. He has no right to load his own soil so as to make it require the support of his neighbors unless he has a grant to this effect. A grant or a prescription is by passage of time or by grant of your right. You give somebody some grant, some right. Interference with the right to land and air. So first is interference to property, now it is with light and air. You have the right to the light above you, the air around you. Unnecessary obstructions can be nuisance. The right to light is also not a natural right and may be acquired by grant or prescription. Such a right has thus been acquired. A substantial interference with it is an actionable nuisance. It is not enough to show that the plaintiff's building is having less light than before. So basically, if somebody builds a high rise next to you, you cannot say that because this is causing me a reduction in light, that person should not make. No, this is not the case. It is possible to acquire a right of air by grant and prescription, and such a right has been acquired. Its infringement is a nuisance. So whenever you acquire such a right, the infringement can be a nuisance. However, it is not possible to acquire a right to access of air over general unlimited surface of a neighbor's land. In India also, you can acquire it by an easement. Okay, so there you do not have unlimited access. You have reasonable access. The making of the house of the next should not have such an effect on your land that your land becomes impossible to you or difficult to you. The Limitation Act and the Easement Act make similar provisions regarding the mode and the period of enjoyment required to acquire this prescriptive right. And the Limitation Act states, so they tell you what period of time which should you enjoy or what should happen so that it becomes a prescription. Where the access and use of light or air to and for any building has been peacefully enjoyed therewith as an easement and as of right without interruption and for 20 years, and where any way or water course of the use of any water or any other easement, whether affirmative or negative, has been peacefully and openly enjoyed by any person claiming title thereto as an easement and as a right without interruption for 20 years. Now understand, here in both these cases, the essence is that you have to use it for 20 years. That land, right, anything has been enjoyed peacefully and without any interruption. You have not, the right has been peacefully used means that nobody has objected to it, there was no dispute in the usage of the right, and it is used without any interruption. There was no breakage in those 20 years. Okay. That right to such access and use of light or air, way, watercourse, use of water or other easement shall be absolute and indefensible. Each of said periods of 20 years shall be taken to be periods ending within 2 years before the institution of a suit wherein the claim to such period relates is contested. So it should end within 2 years before the suit has been instituted. So basically, to get an easement right, to get a prescriptive right, what are the essentials? The essentials are that you use it peacefully, uninterruptedly for 20 years. Okay? Now, prescriptive right of easement of access and use of light can be acquired if the light has been enjoyed peacefully as an easement, as of a right, without interruption for 20 years. Where there is substantial infringement of an easement of light and air, the same is actionable under law in the Indian Easement Act. So you have a right to air and light also. If it is interrupted, you can bring in a case for nuisance. If a person has enjoyed some light for 20 years, he does not become entitled to get all the light. Okay, you cannot say now nobody is going to build anything in near my land. You cannot do that. It is only when there is an appreciable diminution of light which has been enjoyed for 20 years that constitutes a right of action and gives to the proprietor of a tenement that had this enjoyment a right to prevent his neighbor's building on his land. So, if it causes a reasonable action problem, the action therefore does not depend on the fact that the plaintiff has less light than before, but there is a substantial interference with comfort or profitable use of his premises according to the ordinary notions of mankind. The nature of locality has to be taken into account, and the proper test is to see the requirement of people who stay in that locality, because an interference which is otherwise substantial to the residents of an open area may not be so to a person residing in the congested area. So here the right is dependent on the locality of where you stay. Even in a noisy locality, creation of more than average sound is nuisance. So all these rights are seen from the locality where you stay. Okay. Next is injury to comfort or health. There can either be an interference with your property or an interference with your comfort or health. Substantial interference with the comfort and convenience in using the premise is actionable. There has to be substantial interference. From the beginning, we've been discussing something has to be substantial. One timely, something very trivial will not cause a nuisance. A mere thrilling or fanciful inconvenience is not enough. So, one day somebody has a party, no. If continuously somebody plays noise, then it is problem. The rule is de minimis non curate lex. That is, law does not take into account any trifling matters, very trifling matters. So, it is very minimal, very trifling, or very small, law will not take into account. It's called the rule of de minimis. If it's very trivial, it is not taken into account. There should be a serious inconvenience and interference with the comfort of the occupiers of dwelling house according to the notions prevalent among reasonable men and women. So there has to be a serious inconvenience and interference. If it is minor, it is not taken into account. The standard of comfort varies from time to time and place to place. The standard of comfort required in a place where there are hospitals is different. In the night, it is different. In the morning, it is different. In the morning, if noises are made, it is still acceptable. However, if you do construction at night, it might cause nuisance. Okay. Inconvenience and discomfort from the point of view of a particular plaintiff is not the test of nuisance. But the test is how an average man residing in the same area would take it. The plaintiff may be oversensitive. So, as I said, the test is of what? Average person in that locality. Okay. Lastly, there has to be damage. Without damage, you cannot bring an action. We've already seen that. Unlike trespass, which is actionable per se, actual damage is required to be proved in action for nuisance. So, if you want to bring in an action for nuisance, you have to show there has been actual damage. In the case of public nuisance, the plaintiff can bring an action in tort only when he proves a special damage to him. So, in public nuisance, there has to be a special damage. In private nuisance, although damage is one essential element, the law often presumes it. Okay. What happens when there is nuisance on highway? What happens in cases of nuisance on highway? Obstructing a highway or creating dangers on it or in its close proximity is a nuisance. Okay, because highway are public ways. You cannot cause danger or nuisance. Obstruction need not be total. The obstruction must, however, be reasonable. Thus, to cause the formation of queue without completely blocking a public passage is nuisance. There was a case recently that some people started distributing something on the highway which caused a lot of traffic jams on the highway. They were not authorized, they did not do it properly by taking permissions, and this caused a lot of traffic and a lot of traffic jam. This can be a case of nuisance. Creation of dangers on the highway by making excavations, projection of tree or lamps, leaving slippery or dangerous substances on the road can also amount to nuisance. It causes a discomfort to your health, danger, inconvenience to you. Okay? Doing an act in one's own premises, even though that offends the sentiments of the passerby by of a certain classes of person is not a nuisance. In your land, if you do something and it is not causing any unreasonable interference with the right of others, or it is not illegal, even a certain category of people may not like it, it is not. Now, what happens in cases of projections? Regard projections on the highway by objects like overhanging branches of a tree or a clock, etc., from the land or building adjoining the highway. No action for nuisance can be brought for such unless some damage is caused thereby. Because trees obviously hang, something is hanging. So, in case there is something that has caused damage to you, only then you can bring. Or remember the thing, substantial damage has to be proved, special damages have to be proved. The mere fact that some object projects on the highway does not mean that it is a nuisance. If every projection was considered to be nuisance, it would seem that a forgery, every lamp so overhanging, every signboard, every clock, every awning outside a shop are in themselves illegal erections. Not to mention the upper story calibrate over the roadway, which are very common in every town in the country for centuries. I should have thought it clear that the right of public in a highway was merely to pass and repass, and that so long as the right is not interfered with, they could not complain of what in the air above or the earth beneath exists. So, this is from a case where it is said that every shop, if there is some crowd outside it, every billboard, every tree can be a nuisance. Until and unless it causes damage to you, you cannot bring an action for it. It has been noted above that the mere fact that there is some projection on a highway does not make the occupier liable for nuisance. If even if such a projection, which was naturally on a premise, for example, a tree breaks or collapses and causes damage to someone on the highway, the occupier cannot be made liable unless it is shown that the occupier knew or ought to have known about the dangerous condition of the projection. For example, a tree is very healthy, strong, it does not seem that it will fall on the road. And suddenly, some air comes in, or some wind comes in, or some thunder, or randomly the thing falls. You cannot be made liable. Only and only if you knew or you should have known that this will cause damage, then you are liable. If the occupier of the premises knows the defect in projection but does not get the same removed, he is liable. Obviously, you knew something and you did not remove it. It is no answer to an action that he had employed an independent contractor to remove the defect, but the same had not been done properly. You have to make sure that if there is a projection and if it can cause damage to other, you are removing it. As regards projection on private land rather than on highways, such projections themselves constitute nuisance because in such a case there is an interference with the neighbor's absolute right to uninterrupted enjoyment of his own land. So in cases of localities Or in cases of private lands other than highways, every projection, we've already read that, can be a nuisance if it causes inconvenience to the other. And in cases of highway, every projection which might cause damage and which reasonably seems to cause damage and causes damage is a nuisance. But if it is something that cannot reasonably be foreseen or should have been removed by the owner and he did not do it reasonably, then it is not a liability. Now, what are the defenses for nuisance? A number of defenses have been pleaded in an action for nuisance. Some of the defenses have been recognized by the court as valid defenses, while others have been rejected. So there are effectual defenses and ineffectual defenses. Effectual defenses are prescriptive right to commit nuisance. We've already seen there's a prescription and statutory authority. And ineffective is nuisance through the act of others, public good, reasonable care, and plaintiff coming to the news. We will see these are self-contradictory, therefore no defenses. Ineffectual defense. Effectual defenses. First is prescriptive right to commit a nuisance. A right to do an act which would otherwise be nuisance may be acquired by prescription. If a person has continued an activity on the land of another person for 20 years or more, he acquires a legal right by prescription to continue therewith in the future also. We've read prescription by law also 20 years. A right to commit a private nuisance may be acquired by as an easement if the same has been peacefully and openly enjoyed as an easementary right without interruption for 20 years. On the expiration of this period of 20 years, the nuisance becomes legalized ab initio, as if they have been authorized by the grant of the owner of the subservient land from the beginning. The period of 20 years cannot commence to run until the act complained of begins to be a nuisance. So basically, if you cross somebody's land with your cattle every day for 20 years, after 20 years, the person cannot say that he's causing some, the cattle when it passes, it leaves behind dirt and dust, and therefore it is nuisance. No, if it is done peacefully for 20 years, it is a legal right. You get a easementary right over it, a prescription over it. Now, something done under statutory authority. An act done under statutory authority is a complete defense. We've seen that before also. If nuisance is necessarily incidental to what the authority has been authorized by statute, no liability under law of torts. This is torts, sorry. Thus, a railway company authorized to run railway trains on tracks is not liable if, despite due care, the sparks from the engine set fire to the adjoining property or the value of property is depreciated because of the noise, vibration, smoke of the train. So if this happens because you have a statutory right or you have a right by the government to run railways, you cannot question. What is ineffectual? It says nuisance due to acts of others. Sometimes the act of two or more persons acting independently of each other may cause nuisance, although the act of any one of them would not be a nuisance. The action could be brought against one of them, and it is no defense that the act of the defendant alone would not be a nuisance, and the nuisance was caused when the two acts were done together. So, probably one person doing something and the other person doing something independently, not nuisance. But if they do it together, it may result in a nuisance. Then you can bring an action against one, and the other cannot say that because of that person it is a nuisance. Okay? If there is a nuisance by 100 people leaving their wheelbarrow in a place, and a single wheelbarrow by itself cannot cause nuisance, an action can be brought against those 100 persons, and none of them can be allowed to take the defense that his act by itself would not cause any damage to the complainant. So, for example, on your next to your land or in front of your land, somebody sits to sell vegetables. Now, because of that one person, 10 other also come and sit. You can bring an action that one person merely also causes nuisance, but those 10 together collectively may cause nuisance. So, this, okay? Public good. It is no defense to say what is a nuisance to a particular plaintiff is beneficial to general public. Otherwise, no public utility undertaking could be liable for unlawful interference with others' rights. So you cannot say that what is a nuisance for you is good for the others. A nuisance That's why we study private nuisance under tort. Okay. Shelfer versus City of London Electric Lighting Company. In this case, during the building of an electric powerhouse by the defendants, there were violent vibrations resulting in the damage to the plaintiff's house. Now, this is not authorized by the statute. Statutory authorization ke through, if it would have happened, it would have been something. This is somebody building a electric powerhouse. In an action for injunction by the plaintiff, the defense pleaded was that if the building was not constructed, the whole city of London would suffer by losing the benefit of light to be supplied through the proposed powerhouse. The plea was rejected and injunctions were issued. Why? Because your work is causing damage and vibrations to somebody's house. That is unreasonable interference with property and with health also. Reasonable care to prevent nuisance is generally no defense. We've already read if something is reasonable, it cannot be nuisance. They are contradictory. Rapier versus London Tramway Company. Considerable stench amounting to nuisance was caused from the defendant's stables, constructed to accommodate 200 horses to draw their tram. Obviously, there are 200 nuisance horses. There would be smell and stench which was coming. The defense that maximum possible care was taken to prevent the nuisance failed, and the defendants were held liable. If an operation cannot, by any care and skill, be prevented from causing nuisance, it cannot be lawfully undertaken at all, except with the consent of those injured by it or by an authority of a statute. Plaintiff coming to the nuisance. It is no defense to say the plaintiff himself came to the plaintiff of nuisance. That is, you were doing something and the plaintiff came there. A person cannot be expected to refrain from buying a land on which a nuisance already exists. And the plaintiff can recover even if nuisance had been going on long before he went to that place. So basically, if a land has some problem and it has not become a prescriptive right, that person has the right to buy that land. You cannot say that why did you come and buy this? The maxim voluntae non injuria will not apply in such cases. So this was about nuisance. What is nuisance? Types of nuisance, defenses, essentials. And we've understood nuisance is an unreasonable interference with the right of the enjoyment of land of somebody else.